The problem with the Watts, everybody says, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have said, the Watts have gone away quietly and blah, blah, blah. I never believed that. I believe the Watts have been lurking behind the scenes for a long time, and they're watching what's going on. They're listening. And I also think that they've used channels for years. And I also think, and let me just say this, what they've gone through is absolutely awful. What Chris did, the shame that brought on the family, knowing that Cindy Watts is so image conscious. But even when you look beyond that, what he did, what their son did, it's just mind-boggling to wrap your head around what he did and to live with it. I think even though they'll always be in denial, I do think they realize, even if they don't admit it to themselves, I think they realize that the game is over for Chris and that he'll never be released. That's my opinion. They have to realize that now, that it's never going to happen. I think both Ronnie and Cindy were good grandparents. Up until the Nutgate incident, which I've never explored on this channel because I don't know what happened. I know there was an incident because Shanann mentioned it in her text, because Chris mentioned it, and because Ronnie mentioned it, and they can't all be lying. There was an incident, but as far as I'm concerned, I wasn't there, and situations and incidences can be looked at from various different perspectives. And I've never thought that it was fair for me to analyze what happened because I wasn't there, and there's always more than one side of the story. But I do think up until that incident, at least, that Ronnie and Cindy were good grandparents. That's my personal opinion. I'm not a fan of Ronnie and Cindy. I've made that very clear. I think the way they conducted themselves, particularly right after the murders, was shameful, was wrong, was in poor taste. But I don't think that they were bad grandparents. I do think that they were good grandparents up to a certain time or up to a certain level. And I just want to break here a little bit and talk about something. Because Miss Mensah recently did a stream, and it was basically all about my last podcast on Shanann. And what I find interesting is how she takes and twists everything that you say and puts it into her own context and puts it into her own narrative. And I think that's what she does with this true crime case. She takes and twists everything to suit her own narrative. Like, for example, I said somebody, and I didn't say who it was, and I never even mentioned Miss Mensah's name, but I was referring to her in that sense, on that incident, on that point. I said that, people were talking about her buying prime rib and not making mortgage payments. To me, that is not true crime. Talking about Shanann buying prime rib has nothing to do with the crime that was committed, and that is not my focus. This is a true crime case. It's not a crime case about what Shanann's personality was. And that's the difference between me and Miss Mensah. I've talked about this case. Yes, I've talked about the personalities and the characters within the case, and I've talked about what could have caused this to happen and what led up to the tragedy. But Shanann buying prime rib has absolutely nothing to do with the murder itself. But the interesting thing is that Miss Mensah said that I said that Shanann bought prime rib for her friends. But I didn't say that. I specifically said Shanann bought prime rib, in her opinion, to impress her friends. But, she takes and twists everything you say to suit her own narrative. I haven't been listening to Miss Mensah very much lately. But that podcast, for some reason, I decided that I was listening to. And the reason why I haven't been listening to her much is because hearing the word Cindy White rats and Christopher Wood's wife and scumbag attackers, hearing those things repeated over and over again in every single live stream just becomes boring. I kind of find her boring, dull, unimaginative. It's the same stuff over and over again. She also likes to repeatedly talk about how I wasn't around back then. I don't know the case because I wasn't around in the early stages. I'm a newbie. I only started posting content on this channel 2 years ago, and it's not even quite 2 years ago yet. It's 2 years in May. So yes, I admit that I'm the last person to jump on the Watts train. But I was around in the early days. I just didn't have a channel, but I was a YouTube user. I've been a YouTube user for years. So her insinuation that I don't know anything because I wasn't around in the early days. No, the difference is I did not have a channel back in the early days of this crime. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't around. So that's the other thing that Miss Mensah does. Everything is either black or white for her. There's no shades of grey. You're either a scumbag attacker or you're a victim. You're either a nice person or a totally bad person. And there's no in between for her. Like, for example, I don't particularly like Miss Mensah. I think what she's doing is wrong. But that doesn't mean to say that I can't say anything complimentary about her. I stand by my opinion that she's a very effective communicator. Yes, I find her boring because she repeats the same stuff, but she does speak very well. She articulates very well. She's an effective communicator. She can obviously spell. The way she constructs her sentences is very effective. I find her boring. I'm not a fan of her. But I do think that she has some positive attributes. The difference with Miss Mensah is that when she doesn't like somebody, she can't give them a single solitary compliment. So Shanann gets no compliment from her. Shanann is all bad. She can't say a single positive thing about Shanann. And I was saying that to somebody who commented on my video about Shanann because Miss Mensah was really annoyed about that video. And she was also talking about how I use the word bossy, saying that people are describing Shanann as bossy. And she was referring to herself that she never used that word. She interpreted that whole podcast that I did on Shanann to be about her. And in actual fact, I was talking about haters of Shanann in general. I wasn't just talking about what Miss Mensah has said. There was another channel creator who said that Shanann was bossy. And so I was just using that point. And she was saying, I think I've ever used that word, or something to the effect of, I think Shanann was a lot more than bossy. But I wasn't referring to her on that bossy point, on the point of Shanann being bossy. But everything has to be about her. And I think she was also annoyed that I did the podcast on Shanann, because anything positive that is said about Shanann is looked upon by her with absolute disdain, because she has a complete hatred and fixation with the woman. Very, very strange to be this fixated on a woman and to have this much hatred in your heart for somebody after so many years. And I believe that she uses Bella and Cece. What we want to know is what happened to poor little Bella and little Cece. She likes to use that term. I don't think she cares about Bella and Cece. I think that Bella and Cece are just pawns in her scheme. They're just weapons that she uses against Shanann. Because if she really cared about the plight of children, she would talk about the Gypsy Rose case, and she would talk about the Susan Smith case, and she would talk about lots of other cases where children have been abused or neglected by their parents. If she really cared about children that much, she would talk about other cases. She has 2 channels dedicated to Shanann, and she keeps opening and reopening other channels to dedicate herself to fixating on Shanann and Cindy Watts. The other thing that I want to say is You know, the fact that she can't find one redeeming quality in Shanann. She can't say anything positive about Shanann. Everything she says about Shanann is all negative. You know, I had a commenter on my channel the other day, the What's Obsession lady, who I get on with very well. We don't have exactly the same opinions, but we can still agree to disagree. The What's Obsession lady made a comment on my channel where she picked out Shanann's flaws, but she also talked about the positive things about Shanann. So it wasn't all painting Shanann as a saint. You know, she was talking about the things that she thought were negative about Shanann, and she also spoke about the things that she thought were more positive about Shanann. You know, she was able to have a balanced perspective on Shanann. It wasn't just coming from, her comments weren't just coming from a malicious and hate-filled point of view. And I left her comment up, and I said, just because I don't agree with everything you said doesn't mean that I'm going to delete your comment or something to that effect. You know, Miss Mensah, on the other hand, she can never, ever have a discussion about Shanann where she can even say one positive thing about Shanann, even when it comes to thumbnail photographs. You know, I use a nice picture of Shanann, and I actually should have asked Frankie, who comes to my channel all the time, whether, you know, I had permission to use, you know, whether he would allow me to use a photograph. But I mean, everyone uses photographs of Shanann. I try not to, usually out of respect. But, you know, the photograph that I used was a picture of Shanann looking absolutely gorgeous. And, you know, that's how I'd like to remember Shanann, as the beautiful woman that she was. And I chose a nice picture to reflect that. When Miss Mensah chooses a picture of Shanann, she will take the most unflattering picture of Shanann to use on her thumbnails, because her agenda is to continue to degrade and demean this woman for the remainder of her life. And I think that that's a very, very strange hatred and fixation to have towards someone who has never done anything to you, Miss Mensah. Shanann has never done a thing to you. Another thing she claims falsely is that I've done a lot of, I talk about her all the time, and Cindy Watts. Talking about her and Cindy Watts is one of my mainstays. I've done more videos and podcasts on Dave in the last few months than I've done on Miss Mensah or Cindy Watts. Yes, I've spoken about Cindy Watts. Yes, I've spoken about Miss Mensah. But I've spoken about a lot of different topics on my channel. I've done the Vallow case, which was the first case that actually, you know, I got real engagement for, because by the time, I mean, even though I opened my account in 2011, I think it was, and an account was open for me in 2011, I never started using it till, I think 2020. So I never had a channel before 2020. I had an account, not a channel. So I've discussed COVID on this channel. I've discussed the Vallow case, the Watts case. I did a video or a podcast on Jussie Smollett the other day. And I've done a lot of Dave podcasts in the last few months. And I've done a few podcasts on Elizabeth Holmes. And I've done, to a lesser extent, stuff on the Morphew case and the Gabby Petito case. But she makes out that my channel is based around Cindy Watts and her. And that is just a flat out lie, especially when you look at my channel. There's variety on my channel. There is some true crime stuff. There's some stuff about COVID. I do analysis on personalities. To say that I've also done a case on Melissa Caddick, who was an Australian woman who stole money from people. She was a con artist. You know, I've done a little bit about the Derek Chauvin case, the George Floyd case. You know, I've done a variety of different things, but she speaks as if my channel revolves around her and Cindy Watts. And I that's just a flat out lie. And that is completely and utterly false. The other thing I noticed that Miss Mensah does is that she likes to use her community page just to vent and rant. And she has done that particularly in the last few weeks, and I think I know why that is. You know, she likes to use her community posts to just vent and rant at people in capital letters, you know, always trying to validate herself. Everyone is a scumbag attacker, and she's just this wonderful person discussing a true crime case. And it's always negativity about Christopher Wood's wife again. And when you look at my community posts, I share with you pictures of food that I'm cooking, pictures of cakes that I'm baking. I do a little bit, you know, I talk a little bit about current events, and my community posts, I try to keep them positive, you know, particularly when it comes to showing you what I've been cooking and what I've been baking. And that's the difference between me and Miss Mensa as well. You know, there is some dark in me and there's some light in me. But with Miss Mensa, everything about her is just dark, depressing, and just soulless. You know, there's nothing, there's no positive light. The only time there's positivity coming from her is when somebody is agreeing with her narrative and being subordinate to her. And somebody actually wrote on my on one of my videos saying that they used to be a subscriber of Miss Mensa. I don't even know if I can find the comment. And once Miss Mensa realized that she was not agreeing with her opinions and she was asking questions, Miss Mensa gave her the boot. Let's read this. I was a sub for MM for over 3 years. Now she has me blocked because she didn't like my opinions. For months, MM has been attacking other channels and saying that they are scumbags, but MM is a scumbag attacker. I don't like Paula, and I forgot to ask this woman who Paula is. I'm guessing it might be Star Mama, but I'm not sure. I don't like Paula. She's been saying that CSW was a cutter. When I confronted her, I got no response from Paula. So I don't know who this Paula is, but, you know, this is just an example. And I've had many messages like that and comments like that of people saying that they were just deleted, blocked, and shut out by Miss Mensa because they didn't agree with her narrative. And, you know, Miss Mensa was talking about how she would like to have me on her panel. I'm not going on her panel because I know what she does to people when they come on her panel and she doesn't like them. You know, I'm not as naive as Kelly is. You know, Kelly made the mistake of going on her panel and got, you know, the nasty treatment by Miss Mensa. And that's what she wants to do to me. But I'm not going to fall for her nonsense. And I'm not falling for her trap, you know, because she's asked me to come up on her panel a few times. And I have no interest on being on Miss Mensa's panel. I know what her opinions are. And I'm not going to be forced to listen to her opinions. I'm not going to have her opinions forced down my throat. And I'm not going to force my opinions on her. It's fine that her opinion is different. I just think the way she channels her opinions is wrong. And that's the difference. It's not that the fact that she has a different opinion from me, but dedicating several years to attacking a woman, that is wrong. She can keep her opinion to herself. I mean, she's saying that I am influencing people not to like her. But there's a lot of people who come to my channel who don't like her, and they don't like her not because of what I've said, has nothing to do with me. They don't like her because of how they've been treated by her or the things that she said. So Miss Mensa, I'm not coming on your panel because I know what you did to Kelly. And you don't hear me shouting and screaming and swearing like Kelly does because I'm not interested in doing that. I'm more about light and positivity and trying to be fair and balanced and, you know, having a laugh here and there. And yes, sometimes we have to be serious. We can't all be laughing all the time. But I'm not interested in the degrading way in which you speak to people if they don't agree with you. I've seen and heard about what you do when people come on your panels, and I'm not doing it. So thanks for the invitation, Miss Mensa, but no thanks. Another thing that I find interesting, Miss Mensa, is that I'm not the one who deleted your comments or blocked you. You are the one who commented on my channel, and then you deleted your comments and you blocked me. But I wasn't in any argument with you. So the fact that you said that you weren't interested in anything that I have to say anymore, but yet you still keep coming back to my channel to listen to what I have to say after saying you had no interest in what I had to say anymore, and then to say that you would love me to come up on your panel, I think that's a bit of a flip-flop, isn't it? It's a bit contradictory. One minute you're saying you don't want to have anything to do with me, you don't want to listen to anything that I've got to say, but you keep coming back to my channel to listen. And then you're asking me saying that you'd love for me to come up on your panel. Doesn't add up, doesn't make sense. And I have the right to believe that Christopher Wertz, because she never says Chris Watts either. That's the funny thing. I have the right to believe that Christopher Wertz murdered his wife, not just because he wanted to be with NK, which I believe she was the catalyst, yes, but I do believe that there was also financial motive. And even if you don't think that he cared about money, the fact of the matter is everyone cares about money. He just didn't show it the way that Shanann did. He wasn't as showy as Shanann, but that doesn't mean that he didn't care about money. Everyone cares about money. And if he had a new girlfriend to wine and dine, I can bet you he wouldn't have wanted a divorce to expose the financial situation that they were in. He wouldn't have wanted a divorce to have to pay child support, because I don't believe that he would have gotten sole custody of those children the way that you do. So yes, I do believe that there was a financial incentive to get rid of his family. I think there was I think he discarded his family, and I don't think he wanted to be with Shanann anymore, and I don't think he wanted his children. I think he was only interested in NK. That's my personal opinion. And getting back to the Watts, I think they did a disservice to this case by not showing empathy. And the other thing, if there is one thing that you can take away from this, if you reach this far in this podcast, the mistake that a lot of people make is that they think that people turned against the Watts because they continued to love their son. Never have I once said that they should not continue to love their son. In fact, there is one podcast that I made about Cindy Watts where I said she had every right to continue to love her son despite what he did. What I took issue with is the blaming of Shanann, constantly blaming or projecting the blame on Shanann. Shanann didn't dig a hole for herself and put herself in her own grave. Those kids weren't put in the oil tanks by their mother. The fact that they never have held their son accountable for his actions is what I took issue with. The fact that they continue to blame Shanann, even after hearing all the evidence, is what I took issue with. I never once took issue with the Watts continuing to love their son. And I never insinuated that I expected Chris to get a divorce and look for an apartment in 5 weeks. I said that he could have started making moves towards that direction, in that direction. He could have started making moves into getting a separation or a divorce. In the 5 weeks that he had, I think there was a lot more things that he could have done. He could have been a lot more productive in that time than hopping into the sack with NK, don't you think? If it was so terrible with Shanann and he was so unhappy with her, I think that during that time when she was gone and she was not ordering him around, as some people like to say, when he had free time away from her, instead of jumping into the sack with NK, he could have been making moves towards getting away from her, calling a divorce attorney, getting in contact with a divorce attorney, looking at apartments instead of jumping into the sack with NK. That's what I meant. I never said that I thought that it was possible that he could move away from her and get divorced from her in 5 weeks. So that's something else that you misinterpreted, Miss Mensah, which is something that you like to do. I said he could have made, in that 5 weeks, he could have made moves into that direction, getting away from her, separating, looking at divorce attorneys, looking for apartments, instead of looking to jump into bed with NK. That's what I said, and that's what I meant.